Network. Of 68.
Welcome, everybody, to the Old Gold Show. With you, as always, I'm your host from hammerandrails.com, Andrew Ledman.
And I'm Casey Bartley from Boiler Upload, Rivals Network.
Casey, we've got a very special episode. We just finished recording an interview with the one and only Matt Painter.
I think I've heard of him.
Yeah, he's new on the scene, so we'll see how it goes. Yes, head ball coach, as they say. Talked about everything from exhibitions to Samford to what he does prior to a game. So thought it was a very good conversation. If you want more stuff like this, make sure to like, rate, review, subscribe, click all the buttons that are, depending on where we edit. You know, it could be over here, it could be over there.
There's not going to be buttons.
There
might be.
There's buttons on YouTube. There's buttons on.
Oh, you're
YouTube.
right. I don't have to do that. So there will be YouTube buttons.
Yeah, there you go. So make sure to do all those things so you get more of Casey and I in your lives. So there you go, folks. Enjoy the interview with Matt Painter. Welcome, everybody, to the Old Gold Show. With you, as always, I'm your host, Andrew Ledman.
And I'm Casey Bartley.
And we've got a special guest with us today, head basketball coach Matt Painter. Coach, thanks for joining us.
No problem. Thanks for having me on.
Of course, always great to talk basketball with head coach Matt Painter. I'm going to hand it over to Casey real quick. He's got the first question for you.
Good deal.
It's going to be as good as it's prepared to be. How are you just feeling about the season starting off? We'll get you a little layup to start.
Yeah, obviously it's a little different for us playing such a tough game right away against Arkansas, and but it was very beneficial to be able to play in front of that kind of a crowd and that kind of a program, very talented. They've had a lot of success at Arkansas with Coach Musselman. So it was very beneficial. And I talked about after the game everyone has real problems, but when do they come out? Normally they come out through competition. Normally they come out through, your problems. Do you rebound enough? Do you turn the ball over? What kind of group of guys play the best together? And what a lot of fans and people that watch that haven't been involved with it is you're basing most of your decisions on how your guys compete against each other, and you don't play, yourself as the season goes along. You practice against yourself all the time. So like who was better against Arkansas, like who was kind of worse compared to how people have been practicing against each other, because that's not, it's your gauge, but that's not the real gauge. The real gauge are the games that you play in and how guys can adjust and how guys can perform and how consistent guys are or inconsistent, right? Depends on how you look at that. So, we feel like we're in a good place, but we also, had 20 turnovers in the Arkansas game. And it's just something that, it's just cost us at the end of the year and in back-to-back seasons in the NCAA tournament. And we just have to be more consistent in that area. We've done a good job of rebounding the basketball against Grace. It obviously wasn't the same pressure, but against Arkansas, it was good pressure, but we had unforced errors. So we had turnovers that had nothing to do with their pressure at times. And then sometimes it did. So like you get that mix of, who's really creating this? Like, are you creating this issue or is your opponent creating this issue? And then it just can't be one answer because, you have a scenario with each turnover that you have or you don't have. And that's kind of where we are, just working towards that. And we want to be aggressive. And one of the things when you start talking about turnovers and taking care of the basketball, you're not trying to make people passive or complacent, but it is who you are as a person and as a player. Like sometimes you need to be simple when your ball skills aren't that of, someone like Braden Smith.
Mhm.
Like Braden Smith's got very good ball skills. He can pass the basketball. He can handle it. He can get places that a lot of people can't get, but you can't allow that to get you in to trouble. You got to be able to see it, especially when you think about things as early clock, late clock. Like when you get to a low clock situation, you got to be a little bit more aggressive. Obviously, it's getting low. It's under 10 seconds, whatever it might be. But you can't have these early clock turnovers where you're just dribbling into a web of trouble when you don't have to, and you can just move the ball at that time. So those are some things he needs to work on. It's what we need to work on. And I thought we were better against Grace, but as I said, the competition was a little different.
Right.
Do you feel like 2 exhibition games is the right amount? Do you wish there were more? Obviously, the charity games are something kind of new, and it allows you to play better opponents.
Right. I would move. I think the 2 is fine if you can play 2 charity games.
Okay.
Yeah, I like that piece of it, especially I've always liked the secret scrimmage, not for the format, but for who you're playing.
Right.
Like that's what really helps you is when you can go in there and play, especially when you play different people that are a lot different than you are. When Bill Carmody was at Northwestern and they ran the Princeton, we'd try to grab somebody like William and Mary, who was running the Princeton at the time. And you're always trying to get, we don't have a lot of people in our league that press. So like getting and playing Providence when Ed Cooley was there, we were really big one time. So, and Dayton was having a lot of success with Archie Miller, and they had a lot of interchangeable pieces, which, you have those hybrid forwards really playing the 4-5. You had a lot of athleticism. So we played those guys because we thought with our size, that's something that could give us, some issues and give us some problems. And we wanted to see that. Going against, pressing teams, we played Huggy 4 times at West Virginia, and that really helped us prepare. So you're constantly trying to kind of deal with things that you think might give you problems. And I think a lot of coaches do that, whether you don't see on the East Coast, you see more zone. And now we have East Coast teams and you see more zone from them. Like Fran McCaffrey is at Iowa, but he's an East Coast guy. So you see his 1-2-2, 2-2-1, kind of the mix, that hybrid zone press that he does such a good job with, back to his zone. So you see that more. You see more, with Maryland, and so it's kind of the back and forth of things, but you want to get yourself prepared, for the meat and potatoes, but then you also want to try to get yourself prepared for some things that you see maybe 10 to 20% of the time that can hang you up just because you don't have a lot of experience doing it in that season. Doesn't mean you don't have in the past. So like that's something that's really important for us with those exhibitions is we're trying to bring out some issues that we're having early before we get to games that really count.
Yeah. You talk about the meat, getting to the meat and potatoes. How important was it, given how difficult the schedule is this year and how difficult it gets so soon, going to Hawaii with that field that is just absolutely loaded? How important was it then to go on the road into a place like Arkansas against a really tough team to kind of test your mettle?
Yeah, well, you're going to get, the talent like in that tournament, like there's no question about it, but we're kind of looking at just our first game, like, looking at Samford and really loading up to that and, getting prepared, and then we'll get prepared for Morehead State after that. And we just keep moving on to the next game. But being on the road, it's a really good point that you made, because we're not going to be on the road until we play Northwestern, but yet we're going to be playing some teams on a neutral court. That's going to be pretty dicey, right? It's going to be big time competition. It's going to be a neutral court, but it's still going to have that, for everybody, that kind of that road feel. And to be able to go into Arkansas and get that kind of experience early, I think it's really going to help us.
Jumping over to a little bit more big picture stuff. With the passing of Bob Knight, I've been thinking a lot about just the duality of coaching and how difficult is it to just balance between, being demanding of your players and nurturing at the same time. And
yeah, you got to have a feel. You got to have a feel for each individual guy. You got to have a feel for your team. And I think that's an important piece. in coaching and just kind of understanding that it's very competitive. So like, if you're going to feel it as a coach, like now it's, you got to be able to keep your poise. You got to have your guys calm under pressure. Well, if you're not calm under pressure and you're a maniac over there, like they're probably going to be a little schizo too. Like they're probably going to be, off the rails and losing their mind and arguing every call, like whatever it is. And so I think it's important to have that competitive spirit and have that fight, but also not jump over the fight. And I think it's an important to know what you're doing. I'm huge on that. Like everybody being on the same page, and let's know what we're doing, but also let's play at a high level. Like, you can't be a robot. You can't be systematic all the time. When the ball's loose, man, you got to be able to pounce on it and get those 50-50 balls, rebound the basketball, and then help each other. But it's, it gets to, you want guys that it's their passion. You want them to feel it, when there's a struggle. And those guys that feel it, they normally respond. And because it's important to them, they've put in a lot of time. So from a recruiting standpoint, like, I feel like we got the right guys in the room. And, but now you got to keep things in perspective too. Like, you came here to get your education. This is just a game, and sometimes it gets bigger than that. It only gets bigger than that when you allow it. People's voices and what people say that aren't in our room really aren't that important.
When do you feel when do you feel like that became maybe not natural to you, but just when you felt comfortable in your own skin coaching?
Oh, it takes a while. And there's still times where you're like maybe at like a little bit of a loss on how to handle something, or, handle, poor officiating, or, something in recruiting that's not above board, like things, things that kind of get out of your control that are just kind of, tough parts of the business. But you just worry about what you can control and, feel good about like what you're building and what you're growing, and never forget how they feel. It's no different than when you go to practice as a coach. You're like, man, I am tired. Well, if you're tired, how the hell do you think they feel? They're the ones doing something. And so like, keep it in perspective, like what they have to do every day. Sometimes you get as a head coach, you're like, you prepare every day for practice, and they're going to class, they're dealing with their own issues too. And so it's not like that's all they have. If you can simplify your life, it really, really helps it, where you don't have any of those outside distractions. But for the most part, everybody's dealing with something almost all the time.
Yeah. Yeah. And I mean, you talked about kind of right there, feeling comfortable in your skin. And Casey and I have watched and read a lot of the interviews you've done in the off season, talking about obviously the disappointment, the way last year ended.
Mm-hmm.
And you talk about how, it's not on the players, you're the common denominator through these things. So
Right.
when you're going through those introspective moments, who do you look for or look to kind of get an outside perspective to kind of maybe bring you a different view than you have?
It's not really, I don't want a different view than I have. I want the truth. Yeah. Like, I'm not searching someone to give me a different view. Hell, I have that. All you have to do is go on Twitter and like, you have that.
Oh,
But like, successful people don't bash other successful people when they fail. Like, that just doesn't happen. So you got to take everything with a grain of salt. Like, the people that go through it and the people that are really successful, they fail too. And everybody fails. And it's what you do after you fail. It's what you do to make your program better, to make your team better. I think that's where it lies. So if you go back, like from an analytics standpoint, and look at like what we do and how we make the sausage and how we break down, it's not something where we're flipping quarters over here and heads we're doing this, tails we're doing that. Like, if you go and look at all the positive things that we did last year from just an analytical standpoint, you'd be blown away. You pop up and say, you might have the best resume of anybody in the country, but yet we've had these struggles against these same teams. Well, I don't care when you play a game or who you play. If you want to shoot a high volume of threes and shoot a low percentage and turn the ball over a lot, you're going to have a difficult time winning. And so like, keep generating good shots. So we're the #1 team in the country in shot quality last year. We got the best shot in the country. Why would we go away from that? And then people say, well, like you don't zone. You should zone. You should do this. Well, back-to-back games we've got beat in the NCAA tournament. If we don't foul at the end, they're going to score in the 50s. Like, don't you want to play an NCAA tournament game where the other team scores in the 50s? Like when we went to the Elite Eight, we scored 99 points to go to the Elite Eight. You got to score the basketball. I know that's profound. You got to score the basketball. So if you're, as a coach, if you're not scoring the basketball, you're like, well, we're not getting good shots. But if you go back and you say you are getting good shots and you're not scoring it, like, what would you want us to generate? A bad shot? And so it doesn't make a whole lot of sense, but where it gets you is quit turning the basketball over. Now, is Farley Dickinson doing that to you? Is St. Peter's doing that to you? Or are you doing that to yourself? Because you don't want to take anything away from your opponent who earned it. Now when you go back and you see, once again, you can't answer it in theory. It's situational. Let's just say half the time it was us and half the time it was them, right? And so you have half of them are unforced errors, and I'm not saying that's entirely correct, but just argument's sake, and then half of them are on, you have your unforced errors, then you have it because the opponent did a really good job in some action defending it. So that's where you go back and you try to fix that other half. But the unforced ones, it's just concentration. It's just taking care of it. And we have the people to do it and do a better job. And they have done. They have had a level of success of doing that. We just haven't had that at key times.
This might be a theoretical question, so I apologize for that. Is there something about winning a game early in the season that can almost battle against getting better later on in the season?
I think you learn better lessons when you lose a game. There's an old saying that, but only learn that lesson once. Right? You don't want to keep learning the lesson. You're not always learning it, or you don't have the pieces to do anything about it. So I think that's an important, part of things is like, did we learn anything from Arkansas? Mm-hmm. Like, that's what those games have always been really good for us. Like, we haven't had a lot of success, but we also don't prepare for them that much at all. I would prefer to get in those games and see what somebody can do, like see what somebody really knows in terms of execution. And you kind of see, like, you'll see some guys trying to do some things that they probably shouldn't do. You'll see some guys that'll just, be very comfortable and playing to their strengths, and which is a positive. So like, you get some questions that you didn't know were there, you get them answered, and some, and kind of where everything is. But no, it's, competition earlier in the season, you don't have as many people, many teams giving everything they have to defending, giving everything they have to little things to help their team win. And as the season progresses, everybody gets better in that area because you lose, and normally rotations get shorter and then roles get defined. The earlier you can you want your roles to get defined organically. And sometimes you can, sometimes you can't. And then sometimes you have a lot of people that can shoot the basketball that are pretty confident guys. So then when they get open looks, they're going to take them, and rightfully so. And if it's just the collection of those guys getting those shots and not making them, as a coach, if they're good shots, you want to encourage that. Right. You just don't want to be a result-based coach to where it's like, whenever you miss, you're mad. Whenever you hit, you're happy. That's not how you build confidence. That's not how you make guys understand, what's a good shot and what's not a good shot. So I think there are some silver linings sometimes to a loss earlier in the year that can help you grow as a team without question. But you can't selectively pick that. And when people want to selectively pick that, they're really raising their hand that they don't understand the game of basketball.
Goes back to not spending time on Twitter, because, man, after every loss, every questionable call by anybody, you go on there and you would think everybody on Twitter has a PhD in basketball. It can be a tough place. Yes. Can't imagine what it's like for somebody in your position.
Yeah. Well, what they say doesn't matter. Make sure you understand that. Like, it just doesn't. When people say, well, when you talk in generalities and you don't know like the game of basketball. It comes out really quick because what they're doing is called resulting. So they're taking an end result and saying, since this happened, it has to be wrong. When in reality, you have a lot of data that shows you that it's not. You know, when you say you're the number one team in the country against the top 100 in offensive efficiency, then your offense stinks and you need to change it. When you say that your defense is number 14 in the country versus the top 100 in the country, that's out of 362 teams, and they say you need to zone, it just doesn't make any sense. When you have you got the best offense. Back-to-back years, we had the best offense with 2 totally different years. We were number 2 in the country 2 years ago versus everybody. So like think about those numbers. There's 362 teams, but yet you're getting into those games. They're saying, well, that doesn't work. Well, if you were playing blackjack and it was 75-25, and you said, like, I'm just going to keep betting on the 25. Well, appreciate you donating your money. You know, no, you're going to bet on the 75%, right? And you're going to bet on it again. Well, you just lost twice on the 75 or the 80 or the 85, but you lost twice. Well, you're going on the result. You know, you want to stay process-based and keep growing your program and keep getting better in those areas. And if you're not getting better, like the year before that, 2 years ago, we were like in the low 80s, high 70s in our defensive efficiency. So we made as a staff, and then we had all these great ideas. And I said, you know what we're going to change? We're going to change personnel. We're going to change nothing schematically and watch what happens. Because what we're doing, I haven't been in this league for a quarter of a century and not know what I'm doing defensively. Okay. Like I played for a pretty good defensive coach. I've learned from some pretty good guys in this league. Tom Izzo, Bo Ryan, Thad Matta, Bruce Weber. The beat goes on. I could keep going on. I've learned from a lot of really good guys, whether I've been on their staff, worked for them, observed them, competed against them. And so I said, watch what we do. And the room wanted some changes. And I'm like, our changes are going to be in personnel, but our changes schematically, defensively is not. And then, you know, we ended up being 22 against everybody. And then we ended up being 14th against the top 100. Now, why we're not as good against teams that are lower makes no sense to me. Okay. That makes that is what's puzzling, that keeps me up. And then I you know, go to the kind of the drawing board over and over and say, so you're the best offense versus the top 100, but you're the 12th best offense versus everybody. So you're great or elite versus the great and elite teams. But yet when you get to teams more in the 175 to 250 to even in the low 200s, you're not as good. That's puzzling to me. That is puzzling. Then when you go back and say, well, it's the quickness, they're smaller, they got smaller guards, they got this, and then you watch the game and you see, well, what, other people don't have athleticism? Like Duke doesn't have quickness, like West Virginia doesn't pressure, like help me out here. It just doesn't add up. It doesn't make any sense. So, you know, you could also look at the environment, or you could look at being in the tournament and that piece of it. But when you get to a schematic approach, that piece of it's a little puzzling.
Matt, we want to thank you for your time today. We'll let you go on one little softball. Do you have any pre-game rituals that you're excited to get back to Sunday night, preparing for Sanford on Monday?
I'm not excited to get back to them. No. No, I'm excited to play games, but I'm not excited for pregame rituals. And I don't do, like, I take a nap before the game. Sometimes I can sleep, sometimes I can't.
The new sleeping pods.
Better that I don't. I just kind of sit there and think and go through a lot of different things. But trying to get just try to get yourself prepared, before for any situation that could happen.
Yeah, getting Edie prepared for that tip off against the 5'7.5" guy from Sanford. Not sure if you've seen those videos, but they're having a lot of fun with it.
Yeah, I've seen the videos. Yeah, just trying to keep our focus on the game.
Good. Well, we appreciate you joining us. Thanks so much.